Ferrel with the Franklin County Extension Service, TSU Small Farm Agent. Today we're going to talk a little bit about how we can get started beekeeping. When folks are trying to get started beekeeping, we recommend that you attend a beginner meeting and obtain some education. Also, people need to select proper equipment, new equipment, use research-based information, stick with one or two sources of info. And in beekeeping, there's too many ways of doing the same thing, and also the web is full of misinformation. Folks can obtain and keep bees almost anywhere. Uh, we try to recommend that new beekeepers locate hives to reduce conflicts with neighbors or maybe themselves, putting them in a place where you're not going to walk right in front of the entrance or uh, have people stung, passersby stung. So you need to do a little planning before you set up a beehive. You may select locations away from the farm or home. Uh, Maybe somebody needs fruit crops pollinated or vegetables pollinated, and those are options. You can locate them close to humans without any problems, but planning where you're going to locate your hives and being ready the day that they come is going to be very, very important. There's really um, four, five, six different types or strains of honeybees. Uh, we recommend in Tennessee that you start with Italians because they are, more docile, a little bit easier for people to work with. And in the Beekeeping in Tennessee publication, it's on, I think, page 13 through 14, talks about different honeybee strains. How do folks need to get started? We need to get started with education, attend a local beginning beekeeping meeting, select a proper location, think about equipment needs and sizes, whether we're going to buy a package of bees or we're going to buy a nucleus hive that's already 4 or 5 frames with a laying queen, or are we going to capture swarms? And we need to use caution when we're thinking about capturing bee swarms because we may obtain diseases, mite problems, small hive beetles, and other pests. We need to also think about where we're going to locate these hives and have easy access. We need to be able to get a vehicle or some type of ATV uh, to these locations because everything in beekeeping, you'll realize after you start, is really heavy. So we need to be able to have road access or be able to, you know, get to them so we can apply equipment, take equipment off, remove honey, and that sort of thing. This slide is talking about the different hive part components, and uh, this could be very, very confusing. Uh, we've got 3 or 4 different sizes of uh, boxes. We've got bottom board. We've got hive body. A lot of these terms can be really confusing, and we'll talk about later that standardizing your beehive equipment will make life a lot easier, and you'll do away with about 3 different size boxes, and we'll standardize and keep one size box. When we're thinking about beehive, we're talking about something that could weigh, 1,000, 1,100 pounds in the peak of honey production. So we don't want to go out to the apiary and find a beehive that's turned over or is leaning, fixing to turn over. And if you get a beehive that's turned over with 60 to 100,000 bees, then you're going to have some agitated bees. So we need to think about a good foundation to put our beehive on. And it needs to be a little higher off the ground than we used to recommend, because we have armadillos, and of course we've always had skunk problems, but armadillos and skunks will feed on these bees and get them agitated as well. So instead of maybe 2 cinder blocks high now, we probably want to think about, uh, 1 cinder block high. We probably need to go with 2 blocks high to get them, 18, 20 inches off the ground. One of my beekeepers several years ago, he put down some geotextile fabric and some gravel, and that helps with weed control. But also, he's got this hive bottom leveled up really good, and that way when you start stacking 5, 6, 7, 8 boxes on top of it, then you're going to be level. The higher you go, you're going to stay consistently level, and it's going to help with the hive not falling over or sinking. And the way his setup is here, he's going to have really good grass and weed control, and he won't have to mow in front of his hive or maintain or use some type of herbicide to control weeds. Hopefully, if we do a good job on planning, then we may wind up with some really good hives. There's probably no guarantee that you're going to get honey the first year, but when you go into the second year with a hive that's established, you could get a tremendous amount of honey per hive. And this producer, one of our beekeeping members, these were some hives on his second year, and you see he's going to get several pounds of honey out of these beehives. We were talking earlier about tremendous amount of weight and making sure we got a good foundation on our hives. If we think about honey weighs 12 pounds per gallon, water is only basically 8 pounds. So a deep high body box filled with honey could weigh in excess of 110 pounds. If we think about the medium or Illinois size boxes, they could be 75 pounds, and a shallow could weigh somewhere around 55 pounds. You could have a hive that easily weighs over 1,000 pounds or more. A lot of people, when they start beekeeping, think about needing all these extra tools. But basically, to start beekeeping, you need a bee suit and gloves, a good suit. You don't want to get stung right when you're starting off. You need a smoker, is very, very important. And for safety concerns, you need a smoker box. You need a hive tool. And, it's almost like beekeeping's almost like the show MacGyver. It's all about the tools. MacGyver always had all these tools, but basically, these tools that are listed here is what you need to get started in beekeeping. We need to select the proper hive components. If we're going to go with all mediums or Illinois boxes, that's a 6 5/8 inch tall box. Or we're going to use a box that's more narrow that holds only 8 frames, or we're going to need a 10 frame box, or all deeps. But you got to think about your back if you're going to go with this all deeps, because you're going to have to remove these boxes to inspect the hive. Do I want 10 frame deeps? Do I want 8 frame deeps? Mixed deeps, shallows, or mediums? When you go to mixing these components, if you buy all 8 frame boxes, then you're going to have to stick with all 8 frame equipment, because a 10 frame box will be too wide and it won't fit on your 8 frame. If you start with all 10 frame boxes, and then you wind up and you run out and you need a extra box, and somebody's got 8 frame, or you find 8 frame equipment, it won't work on your 10 frame. So consistency with your beekeeping components is going to be really important. There are a lot of benefits to standardization. All frames are interchangeable. You always have what you need. It's easier if all your boxes are standard and you have to move brood from one hive to another or to make splits. Then you've got all parts to that hive that are interchangeable. And it really makes life a lot easier to move frames. Everything's interchangeable, and standardization is the way to go. A lot of new beekeepers, when they come to beginning beekeeping meetings, they ask, "Are you going to get stung?" Yes, you're going to get stung at some point. Protective suits help. Uh, when do I get stung? Usually, I get stung when I'm doing something stupid or not lighting my smoker, go up and open a hive without properly smoking it, surprising them, and you're going to learn. Each beehive is like any other project. That queen controls the temperament of that hive, and a lot of times you'll learn. Uh, hive number 5 under the tree. It doesn't like me working it late in the evening, so we're gonna have to learn, uh, when to work your colony and maybe the temperament of each colony. Will you have a reaction to a sting? A lot of people, if you don't get the stinger out, you're you're gonna swell. You're gonna have a lot worse reaction than if you get the stinger out and you don't let the bee venom get into your body. We talk a little bit about in our beginning beekeeping courses uh, the bee anatomy. It's very important to understand that this bee is built uh, basically to collect pollen and nectar. And, one of the main things, this is an anatomy of a worker bee. She is a sterile female, and she basically uh, does all of the work in a beehive. And she is equipped with a stinger. And they have hairy bodies so that they can collect pollen, and basically they comb their body and move this pollen to their pollen baskets and carry that back to the hive. And pollen is a very essential uh, bee food that they need to help raise young. Basically, in our beginning beekeeping course, we talk about the 3 types of bees in the hive. The queen bee is the most important bee in the hive. She controls temperament, how well they work. Her genetics will dictate how they draw wax. A lot of things, almost probably 90% of the things in the hive is controlled by the queen genetics. How well they work, how well they draw wax, how well they bring in nectar, uh, how she lays eggs, her egg pattern, how many bees they have in the hive, and the workforce. The worker bee basically does all of the work. They haul water, they bring in nectar, they bring in pollen, they build wax. So they are the workforce in our beehive. The drone is the male bee. And one thing interesting about the drone, he doesn't do a whole lot of work. He actually, his only job in life is basically to mate with a queen, a virgin queen, when she goes on a mating flight. He can't sting, and a lot of times we'll catch drones out in the bee yard and give them to people, and they sort of get scared. But the drone or male bee cannot sting, and basically he is welcome in just about any hive. He can fly around and go from hive to hive and beg for food because they know he's not a threat because he really can't do any work. Also, it's pretty important to understand the life cycle uh, of a worker bee. And uh, everything in a beehive basically happens in 21-day cycles. So we'll have new beekeepers call, hey, my hive's not building up the way it should. But you got to think about from the time it was laid until the time it was hatched, it's basically 21 days to have a new bee emerge in your hive. Basically, he is spends first 21 days in the hive working, and then he spends the last 21 days as a field bee, hauling nectar, pollen, water, that sort of thing. So it's very, very important to understand the life cycle of a worker bee. This slide shows the total days from an egg to an adult for the three types of bees that are in a hive. If we think about the worker bee, it's 21 days from when it's laid until it emerges. A drone is 24 days. So he has to stay in the egg, larval, and pupa stage for basically the longest, 24 days. The queen bee is the fastest bee in the hive that can be developed, and 16 days from an egg. So these days are very, very important to watch to see how our beehive is progressing. Why is the time of emergence from an egg to an adult type of bee? Ratios are very, very important in a beehive. Uh, Beehives basically, we talked about going in a 21-day cycle. Once this beehive gets wax built on the combs, then the beehive, if everything's right and you've got a good laying queen, can have a snowball effect. And a lot of new beekeepers get caught off guard. They don't understand the term busy as a bee. So they go out there and 1 week their hive is barely going, and a day or two passes and we get more young bees emerging, and then all of a sudden they're scrambling to give the beehive more room. So we need to have the proper balance in a beehive, and it must be achieved. Keeping the proper balance is going to help the new beekeeper with management of that beehive. Where are good places for new beekeepers to get education? Local beekeeping associations. I'm sort of the educational coordinator with the Elk Valley Beekeepers Association. There's some University of Tennessee has the bees.tennessee.edu website. A good book or manual publication that we use for our beginning beekeeping courses is Beekeeping in Tennessee, and it's publication number 1745. And if we're thinking about getting knowledge on beekeeping, we need a book or two, not a bunch of books. And if we think about going on the web and researching beekeeping topics, we need to make sure that we're using research-based information from a land-grant university in our area. In conclusion, don't be overwhelmed. Beekeeping is a continual hands-on learning process. It's a good idea to select a mentor, someone that's kept honeybees for a while, especially in your area. Stay informed. Make sure your hives are registered. Join a local beekeeping association. Follow all these state honeybee regulations. And new beekeepers need to learn about pests and diseases. That way you can be successful in your beekeeping project.